Have you ever felt like you're walking through life carrying a weight no one else can see, as if every step is a silent battle against doubts, fears, past wounds, and the constant noise of people underestimating you? You wake up facing the same challenges, the same inner barriers, the same voices, both external and internal, telling you that you don't have what it takes to rise above your circumstances, and sometimes a painful part of you believes them. Most people spend their entire lives trapped in that belief, convinced that their disadvantages are destiny, that their limitations are fixed, that the hand they were dealt is the hand they must play forever. If you were born without wealth, you will struggle forever. If you lack connections, you'll always be invisible. If you're quiet or introverted, you'll always remain in the shadows. And because they accept these beliefs as absolute truth, they hand over their power to the world without even realizing it. But what if I told you that there exists a mindset capable of turning every disadvantage into a hidden source of power? A mindset that doesn't just compensate for weakness, but transforms it into an unstoppable advantage. A mental framework so potent that once you internalize it, people begin to notice something different about you. An aura, an energy, a silent force they can't explain, but instinctively respect. Today, we are diving into the mythic mind of a warrior who embodied this idea more fiercely than almost anyone in history. His name was Minamoto no Yoshitsune, and though he lived nearly 1,000 years ago, his story carries the blueprint of how to rise even when life gives you nothing. If you're watching this video, it's because you feel something inside you that refuses to settle, a voice telling you that you were meant for more, that your potential is bigger than your circumstances, and that your disadvantages are not chains, they are catalysts. And this video will show you exactly why. Minamoto no Yoshitsune was not born into power. He was not born with influence, money, or even safety. His life began in chaos. His father was killed when Yoshitsune was barely a year old. His family was scattered. His clan was defeated, and he himself was exiled, raised not among nobles or warriors, but in the quiet isolation of a Buddhist monastery, far from the world of politics, fame, and power. Imagine being a child growing up with the knowledge that your family was destroyed, that your name was hunted, that your destiny had already been written by others before you could even speak. Most people would have lived in fear, bitterness, or resignation. But Yoshitsune was different. He understood something profound. When the world takes away everything you rely on, it leaves you with only one thing: your mind. And if you sharpen the mind, eventually the world must bow to it. While other boys his age were being trained in predictable patterns of traditional swordsmanship, following the rigid methods of their fathers and teachers, Yoshitsune was developing something radically different. Deprived of mentors, he became his own. Lacking resources, he turned creativity into a weapon. Unable to train openly, he learned to observe, analyze, and reimagine the battlefield in ways no one had ever considered. He studied how enemies thought, how warriors moved, how leaders behaved, and most importantly, how human beings underestimated anything they didn't understand. He began to realize that his weakness, being small, untrained, underestimated, was actually the perfect camouflage for something far more dangerous: unpredictability. And unpredictability, when used correctly, is one of the most powerful strategies in existence. By the time Yoshitsune became a young man, he had already cultivated a mind that did not operate like anyone else's. He didn't think in straight lines. He didn't accept the rules of traditional warfare. He didn't follow the patterns everyone else believed were unbreakable. Instead, he moved through life like a phantom, seeing possibilities where others saw dead ends, finding openings where others saw barriers, and inventing solutions that seemed insane until they worked flawlessly. His victories on the battlefield were not the results of superior numbers or better equipment. He rarely had either. They were the results of a mind that refused to be confined by what everyone else accepted as impossible. Yoshitsune became the living embodiment of a mythic rule. When you cannot win with strength, you win with brilliance. When you lack resources, you rely on creativity. When the world underestimates you, you strike from angles they cannot predict. And this is not just history. This is a blueprint. Because here is the truth. Most people are not defeated by failure. They're defeated by the belief that their weakness defines them. But Yoshitsune understood that your weakness is only a weakness if you use it the way everyone expects. Shyness can become relentless focus. Poverty can create resourcefulness. Lack of connections can force you into originality. Being doubted can ignite obsession. Not fitting in can make you unstoppable. Weakness is not the opposite of strength. Weakness is the birthplace of a different kind of strength, one that is rare, powerful, and deeply respected. This is the heart of the revolutionary mindset. It's not rebellion for rebellion's sake. It's the courage to question everything people take for granted, to see the world not as it is, but as it could be if you refuse to accept its limitations. Think about the last time you faced a situation that felt impossible. A financial wall, a professional dream that felt out of reach, a personal conflict you couldn't solve. Most people react by shrinking, by assuming that the obstacle is bigger than they are. But Yoshitsune would ask, what angle have they not considered? What rule can be bent? What weakness can be turned into a weapon? He lived by the belief that when everyone else sees only one path, true warriors create their own. And that is the mindset you need to adopt. Because when you stop following predictable patterns and start creating your own, you stop playing the same game everyone else is trapped in. You begin rewriting the rules in your favor. Your difference becomes your leverage. Your so-called flaws become your strategy. Your limitations become the very thing that separates you from the masses who are too afraid to rethink reality. Modern neuroscience even backs this up. Researchers now call this cognitive divergence, the ability to see connections and possibilities that the average mind simply cannot perceive. It's not just intelligence, it's the ability to break pattern. Yoshitsune mastered this long before science ever studied it. And his philosophy lives on not because he lived a perfect life. His life was tragic, chaotic, and brutally short, but because he proved something that refuses to die. If you think differently, if you act creatively, if you turn your disadvantages into your sharpest blades, you become someone the world cannot predict and therefore cannot stop. This brings us to the revolutionary principles Yoshitsune embodied. Principles not just for war, but for life, business, relationships, and personal transformation. When everyone chooses the obvious path, choose the opposite. When everyone sees a wall, look for the hidden door. When everyone imitates, you innovate. When everyone surrenders to their limitations, you weaponize yours. This is not fantasy. This is strategy. And in the next part of this video, I will break down exactly how to apply Yoshitsune's mythic principles into your daily life so that your disadvantages no longer hold you back, but launch you forward with unstoppable momentum. When you begin to understand the mythic mindset of Minamoto no Yoshitsune, you start to realize that greatness isn't a gift. It is a deliberate transformation built through decisions most people are too afraid to make. And in this second part, we dive into how you can apply his philosophy so deeply into your life that your disadvantages become the very reason you rise while everyone else stays stuck. The first step is to rewire the way you view normality, because Yoshitsune never accepted what everyone does as a valid guide, and neither should you. The world conditions you to follow routines, habits, and expectations that keep you predictable. But predictability is the enemy of power. Yoshitsune understood that if you move like the masses, think like the masses, and respond like the masses, you will remain trapped with the masses. So he made a simple rule. When everyone does X, he does Y. And this wasn't rebellion, it was strategy. It was a commitment to never let the world's patterns become his prison. If people build their careers by copying others, you build yours by innovating where they're afraid to experiment. If others fear starting businesses because of risk, you turn risk into opportunity by attacking the areas where competition is asleep. If everyone in your environment talks, argues, and complains, you become the quiet observer who gathers information instead of wasting energy. This is how Yoshitsune turned himself into a force others could not understand, because you can never defeat a person who refuses to operate inside the limits you expect. And this translates into your daily life. You must start interrupting your automatic patterns. If you always wake up scrolling, stop. If you always respond emotionally, pause. If you always avoid discomfort, chase it. Each time you break a predictable pattern, you create a new possibility, and that is how momentum is born. The second principle Yoshitsune lived by is being fluid like water, but firm like rock. This means you must be deeply flexible in method, but unshakable in values. Yoshitsune changed strategies constantly. He attacked from cliffs when everyone said it was impossible. He used smaller ships when others used bigger ones. He redefined tactics in every battle, but he never betrayed his core beliefs. He never sacrificed honor, loyalty, or integrity, even when it cost him everything. And this is where the true myth of power emerges. Strength is not about winning in the moment. It's about being the kind of person the world remembers 1,000 years later. Yoshitsune faced betrayal, political schemes, exile, and ultimately death because he refused to compromise who he was. But look at history. Yoshitsune became immortal while the men who betrayed him faded into dust. This is the paradox of values. If you remain firm in the things that matter, life may test you, but the universe eventually reveals that nothing built on dishonesty or fear lasts. And when you apply this to your life, you stop being a person who reacts to every situation and become someone who chooses with clarity. Your non-negotiables become your internal compass, maybe honesty, discipline, excellence, loyalty, or self-respect. Whatever they are, once you define them, your decisions become clean and your direction becomes inevitable. Without values, you drift. With values, you cut through chaos like a blade. Now, how do you transform this philosophy into daily practice? Yoshitsune didn't become legendary from random bursts of motivation. He became legendary because he trained his mind every day. So here is the system you must adopt. Morning intention. As soon as you wake up, before you touch your phone or let the world hijack your attention, sit for 1 minute and decide who you will be today. Not what you will do, who you will be. What pattern will you break? What fear will you confront? What weakness will you transform? What rule will you bend? Write it down. This is how you anchor your identity. Next comes disruptive action. Choose one action each day that feels slightly uncomfortable but is aligned with the person you want to become. It could be making a difficult call, studying a new skill, practicing discipline, initiating a conversation, or starting a project everyone thinks is unrealistic. The point is disruption. Disruption builds momentum. Momentum builds identity. Identity builds destiny. And finally, you end the day with reflection. Examine what you did well, where fear held you back, what you avoided, and what adjustments you must make tomorrow. Awareness is the fuel of transformation. Yoshitsune didn't win battles on instinct. He won them by refining himself constantly, sharpening his perception, questioning his assumptions, and treating every day as preparation for something greater. You must do the same, because the truth is this. The modern world doesn't reward the strongest or the smartest. It rewards the most adaptable, the most creative, the most resilient, the most unpredictable. It rewards the people who think differently, who act boldly, who leverage what others overlook. And that is exactly what Yoshitsune's life teaches. You are not trapped by your circumstances unless you choose to be. You are not defined by your past unless you cling to it. You are not limited by your weaknesses unless you refuse to explore the hidden power inside them. Your mind is the battlefield where your victories or your defeats are decided long before the world sees them. If you train your mind to think like Yoshitsune, to challenge assumptions, to weaponize disadvantages, to innovate tactically, to stand firm in values, and to move through life with silent creativity, you become someone people cannot predict or control. You become someone the world must adjust to. You become someone who rewrites their own narrative. So ask yourself right now, what rule are you ready to break? What weakness are you ready to transform? What limitation are you ready to weaponize? What part of your identity are you ready to evolve? Because your life will not change from watching this video. It will change the moment you apply its principles. And I want you to write in the comments the one thing you will change today, because naming it is the first step toward owning it. If this video expanded your perspective, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to stop believing that their disadvantages are fate. The truth is simple. You are one mindset shift away from becoming a completely different person. And like Yoshitsune, once you awaken that mindset, you become a force the world cannot ignore.
In the end, what Minamoto no Yoshitsune teaches us is not the story of a warrior from the past, but the story of every person who refuses to let their circumstances define their destiny. Because your life will never be shaped by the advantages you start with, but by the courage you have to transform every disadvantage into strength, every setback into strategy, every doubt into discipline, and every moment of fear into a doorway you walk through instead of running from. The world will always try to convince you that your limits are permanent, but Yoshitsune proved that limits only exist for those who never question them, and that the moment you decide to think differently, move differently, act differently, and expect more from yourself than anyone else ever has, you unlock a version of yourself that is unpredictable, unstoppable, and undeniable. A version of you that doesn't ask for permission, doesn't wait for the right time, doesn't beg for opportunities, but creates them through sheer creativity and unbreakable spirit. And if there is one message you must carry with you after this video, let it be this: your life is not a story of what you were given. It is a story of what you build from nothing. And if you're willing to embrace the revolutionary mindset, break the patterns holding you back, and rise with the same silent ferocity that made Yoshitsune immortal, then no matter who doubts you now, no matter what stands against you today, and no matter how impossible your dreams may seem, the world will eventually have no choice but to recognize the warrior you always had the potential to become.